With the holidays coming up soon, we just want to remind you about our merch store, which you can find at podandprejudice.dashery.com. A Pod and Prejudice t-shirt or sweater or sweatpants or mug or whatever your heart desires would be the perfect gift for your Jane Austen loving bestie. And now, please enjoy this week's episode of Pod and Prejudice covering chapters 8 to 10 of Mansfield Park.
This is Becca.
This is Molly.
We are here
Wait,
to-
hang on. Can I say that again?
This is Molly. That is a blooper if I've ever heard one. This is Becca.
This is Molly.
We are here to talk about Jane Austen.
We are here specifically to talk about
Mansfield Park. Listeners, if you're new here, I, Becca, have read many Jane Austen novels through the course of my life.
And I, Molly, am reading all of them for the first time through this podcast.
If you want to hear Molly read through Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, Emma, or Persuasion for the first time, you can listen to seasons 1, 2, 3, and 4 of this podcast, respectively, but that is not what we're doing here today.
No, today we are talking about Mansfield Park, Volume the First, chapters 8 through 10.
AKA the spicy trip to Southerton.
Yes, we are seeing that avenue. Or are we?
What?
The avenue. The avenue. Of the trees that she wants to see so bad.
Yes, yeah.
She doesn't get to see it.
It took me a minute. Yes.
Someone gets to see the avenue.
I mean,
not Fanny.
Yeah, I think Henry's trying to see that avenue, if you know what I mean.
But I was thinking Edmund gets to see the avenue and Miss Crawford gets to see the avenue with Edmund.
Oh yeah, no, you're talking more physically about the book. I was making a sex joke.
No, I was also making a sex joke, but they're all seeing it. There's a lot of people running off to go smooch in the woods.
Yes, there sure is. So, listeners, there's so much to talk about with this. Last time I said we were going to be, quote, ambitious when we talked about these chapters. And I said to Molly, we're going to read 3 chapters together. And she was like, Becca, these chapters are beefy. They're long. We cannot possibly go through 3 chapters at once. And I said, that might be the case, Molly, but we're going to try because these chapters go together.
Yes, so we should just dive in.
Yeah, we really should. So just to set the stage, going back to what we discussed last time, we were talking about our guy, Edmund Bertram, getting seduced by the one, the only Mary Crawford, and Fanny being a little butthurt about this, and what our listeners have dubbed Horsegate, featured pretty heavily in that set of chapters. And we can also call this the end to Molly's undying love for Edmund Bertram, R.I.P.
R.I.P. because that man is flawed.
Yeah. Yes, I would say.
Yeah.
So here we are, having known that Edmund and Mary are flirting and having Fanny, at one point, at least in the last chapters, be left behind.
Yes. And guess what?
Sure is a theme.
Yeah, it sure is a theme. Fanny getting just simply dropped in the middle of the forest. So let's dive in. Chapter 8. Fanny is riding her horse, and while she's out, the Rushworths come by. And Mrs. Rushworth wants to reinstate the plan for everyone to come to Southerton because it's been like 2 weeks since they made that plan and have not acted on it. And the ladies are like, yes, let's do Wednesday. And Mr. Rushworth is like, I have to ask Henry because the whole point is that he's going to come and, appraise the land or whatever. So he goes to ask Henry. And while he's gone, Mrs. Grant and Miss Crawford come in. And Mrs. Rushworth is in the process of trying to convince Lady Bertram to come. It says that she is a well-meaning, civil, prosing, pompous woman. Prosing meaning talking tediously. And I wanted to flag that, like, in these chapters, we get more of an idea of who Mrs. Rushworth is. And I love her.
She's just being rich and oblivious and fun in her own time.
Yeah, and kind. Like, she is a well-meaning person.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, like, I don't know if it's that Mrs. Rushworth is so kind as much as it's like, to other people, it's kind of crazy how the Bertrams and Mrs. Norris treat Fanny. Like, it's kind of like how in, like the Harry Potter books, like every time like other people see how the Dursleys treat Harry, even if they're not magical or whatever, they're all like that. It's like a thing that Dursleys like hide. Like, I mean, it's suffice to say, it's like you realize how shitty abuse is when you see like how normal people treat the person who's staying with them. So Fanny's their ward, and she is kind of abused by them.
Right.
And whenever like other people are there, like, oh, Fanny will come. Oh, like, is Fanny out? Like, blah 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 blah. Like the weirdness with how Fanny is treated at Mansfield Park is much more apparent when other people come in and start treating her normally.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. I like it. So Mrs. Norris steps in and says, Lady Bertram can't come. It would be too much for her. It's too long. But she's going to have Fanny with her, so it'll be fine. And Mrs. Rushworth is like, oh, Fanny really wanted to see Southerton, like you just said. And Mrs. Norris is like, it's okay. She'll come one day. But for now,
We can't possibly have Fanny with us because she irritates me.
yeah, that's the subtext.
Yeah, exactly.
She's like, Lady Bertram could not possibly spare her. And Lady Bertram is like, definitely not. So then Mrs. Rushworth moves on to try to convince Miss Crawford, who accepts, and Mrs. Grant, who declines. Rushworth then comes back and says Henry says Wednesday is good for him. Then Edmund arrives, and he walks Mrs. Rushworth back to her carriage and takes Mrs. Grant and Mary halfway home. While he's gone, Mrs. Norris is worrying that there won't be any room in Henry's barouche for everyone. And Edmund is like, why wouldn't we just take another carriage? Like, we have a carriage. And the girls are like, no, absolutely not. We can't do that. And Mr. Crawford depends on taking us.
The undercurrent of this is that they just want to ride his barouche.
They want to ride that
They want to
barouche.
ride his barouche.
They say after what passed at first, he would claim it as a promise. What are they referring to? What passed at first?
I think that he told them that they would ride there in his barouche, and they're like, they were excited about it, and they were like, we basically promised him we would.
Yeah.
It'd be so rude to not now.
I see. Mrs. Norris says, well, and the roads are so narrow it would scratch up our carriage. And Mariah's like, okay, that doesn't make it sound like good that we want to take his barouche. It's not that. It's that our driver sucks. She says that their driver can't drive.
Yep.
And Edmund is like, would the barouche box be considered a bad seat? And they insist it's the best seat because that's like next to the driver, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And he says, okay, well, if one of you is up in the barouche box, there's enough room for Fanny to go with you in the back.
Mm-hmm.
And Mrs. Norris is like, no, I already told Mrs. Rushworth that Fanny's not coming. And Edmund turns to Lady Bertram and he's like, do you have any reason for her not to go other than that you want her to be your companion? And Lady Bertram's like, no, but I can't do without her. And he says, you can if I stay at home with you, as I mean to do.
Oh my God, Edmund doing something nice for Fanny.
Record scratch.
Yeah.
I literally gasped out loud, I will say. I was like, ooh, that was hot.
Poor Molly.
They're really toying with my emotions.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes he does good stuff.
Yeah, he's like not a bad person. He's just flawed, like we all are.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh, are you back in love?
No. No, but like I feel similarly to Fanny where like she's kind of like...
Oh, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
For sure.
So Mrs. Norris thinks that bringing Fanny after they expressly told Mrs. Rushworth that she wasn't coming would be very rude. And Edmund says, no, it's okay. I already told Mrs. Rushworth that Fanny was coming when I walked her to her carriage. So he's been thinking about this. Mariah thinks it's odd that he should stay home instead of Fanny. And Julia thinks Fanny should be very grateful to him, as always. But she's also kind of like feeling guilty, like she should have offered to stay back herself.
Yeah. Julia is kind of, there's this conscientiousness that she has that she's like, maybe I should have offered to stay with my mother.
Yeah. Julia's an interesting character.
Yeah, Julia and Mariah, we'll like dive into this further as the book goes on, but the contrast between them, because they're kind of sold as a set, but there is a contrast between the two of them for sure.
They're a little bit like Henrietta and Louisa.
Yeah, or Kittia.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So Fanny is so grateful when she finds out that Edmund is staying behind for her to be able to go, but she also feels guilty because she wishes that he could be there too. And then, in my opinion, we get the first actual like textual admission that Fanny has a crush on him, which is she felt Edmund's kindness with all and more than all the sensibility which he, unsuspicious of her fond attachment, could be aware of.
There you go.
That's the crush.
Yeah, so there it is. So we confirmed canon.
Confirmed canon, and I felt vindicated because for the first like 2 or 3 chapters, I was like sensing a vibe, and I know that everyone was like very like, yeah, Molly's sensing a vibe, but I couldn't tell if it was...
Oh no, the Jane Austen is laying down breadcrumbs or bread loaves or something.
Definitely loaves of
bread,
like
definitely like a full pizza for you to pick up on.
Pizza. Oh, that's good.
So yeah, no, certainly Fanny is crushing on her first cousin who was raised as her sibling.
Yes.
That is certainly happening.
Yeah.
And what we have here is an unrequited trope.
Oh, yeah. So the next time they all get together, Mrs. Grant offers to stay with Lady Bertram instead, which everyone is like, wow, This is great. Edmund can go after all.
Once again, Mrs. Grant being just like queen of all queens.
Queen of all queens. Because, like, she would have said it even in the moment if she had still been there, but she had already gone home.
Yeah, and I think this is like Mrs. Grant. Every time like she comes in, it's just like a little moment of like, oh, coming in clutch.
Yeah, because she's like a good person.
Yeah, she's just nice.
There's a funny moment where Mrs. Norris is like, yeah, I was about to say that too. Like, you should totally go instead. She was like, I was like, it was on the tip of my tongue.
It's on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah. So Wednesday rolls around and Henry comes to pick them all up. And Mrs. Grant is like, Julie, you should take the box because you've been wanting to learn how to drive. And Julie is thrilled. And despite being engaged,
Very engaged.
Mariah is pissed because she's like, I wanted to sit next to Henry Crawford. Fanny is loving this ride. She's looking out at the views and she's like wishing she could talk to Edmund about it because he's riding on horseback behind him. And she thinks to herself that she and Miss Crawford are only alike in the fact that they are both in love with the same person. They're opposites in every other way. Except they both look back at Edmund at the same time and say, there he is, which I thought was weird.
Yes,
Like,
very
imagine,
weird.
like, I understand the concept, but imagine you're like in the carriage and it's like silent, and then the two girls are like looking around, and then they look out the window and they go, there he is. And one of them is his biological cousin.
And the other one's Mary Crawford.
And the other one's Mary Crawford. Yeah,
it's a lot.
Yeah.
This section gives me very she wears short skirts, I wear t-shirts.
Yes.
She's cheer captain and I'm on the bleachers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also very Misery Business by Paramore. Like there's like a certain teenage girl thing. Like good to know it's existed since Jane Austen's time.
Yeah.
Of like, oh, she's like the everything cool girl and I'm just in the corner waiting for my man.
Yeah, that song, which is called
You Belong With Me
You
by
Belong With
Taylor
Me.
Swift.
Yep, You Belong With Me is, I think, one of the things that I've been thinking about that I couldn't get out of my head.
That is a really good comp.
Mhm.
It's very, very that story.
Yeah.
The like what's his face who was like popular for 2 minutes starring in that music video,
Mhm.
and Taylor Swift's in the marching band. But yeah.
And then the other thing is one of our listeners responded last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, that I was like, what movie is this? And said season 1 of Bridgerton, which I think is also accurate.
Which
Nicola Coughlan
oh yeah,
and
yeah.
like
yeah,
Colin.
and yeah, and her cousin. Yes,
Yeah.
I was like, what does Daphne have to do with this?
No. But like they're best friends, and then she has to like kind of be like, oh yeah, like I'm so happy for you, but she's in love with him.
Yeah, it's a very common trope.
Yeah.
The unrequited love triangle is everywhere in our media. We love to pit women against each other.
We do. Meanwhile, Mariah is like glaring at the back of Julia and Henry's heads, and it says she has 2 strings in her bow. She has Rushworth feelings and Crawford feelings, hyphenated. Rushworth -feelings and Crawford -feelings, and I think that's hilarious.
It's
I loved
perfect.
It. But when they see the landscape of Southerton come into view, she's like, Rushworth feelings, because she loves 1, money, and 2, landscaping.
Yes, we have more hot for landscaping.
Yeah. And it's nice that she and Rushworth both have that in common.
Yeah, they have so much in common.
Yeah.
So much chemistry.
So much. Miss Crawford sees that Mariah is taking pride in the land, and so she's agreeing with everything that Mariah is pointing out. And Mrs. Norris is all volubility, meaning talking incessantly. And even Fanny has something to say in admiration of the land. She looks for the avenue, which she has heard so much about, and Mariah points it out. And that is the end of that chapter.
Which brings us to chapter 9.
9. Chapter 9? Sorry.
It's early. It's an early morning record.
Yeah. We've only had 1 cup of coffee.
I have not finished my first cup of coffee.
Me either. I have a couple sips.
And no, everyone, we are, yes, drinking iced coffee in the dead of November.
Well, we're inside.
Yes.
And the thing is, like, I usually drink hot coffee in the mornings, but it would get cold over the course of our record, so that would be impractical.
Yeah, it's much easier for us to be drinking iced coffee while we're recording. I agree with that.
So, chapter 9. The party is welcomed by the Rushworths, and they have a wonderful meal. And then Rushworth asks Henry if he would like to go see the grounds, and Henry's like, well, we should all go. Mrs. Rushworth suggests the chaise, but the girls don't like that idea for some reason. She then says, well, what if I show you guys the house? And they're all like, yeah, let's see the house. So she shows them around, And I liked the note that it was furnished in the style of 50 years back. I think that just, like well, one, they're talking about, like, the fact that, like, it's an old house and all of the, like, paintings are of family members that nobody knows anymore because they're all dead,
Mhm.
but also saying it's furnished in the style of 50 years back kind of implies that it's, like, a little out of date.
Yes, it's unfashionable.
Yeah, like, they're seeing it, they're like, "Okay, like, it's big, but it's not stylish."
Correct.
I also thought it was interesting that Mrs. Rushworth had to learn about all the people in the paintings from her housekeeper. What I was getting from that was not necessarily that the housekeeper is like 150 years old, but more that like the housekeeper, like her family has been in the family for a long time and like she's like learned everything about everything so that she can give tours of the house. But Mrs. Rushworth is either bored or like conscientious enough to like want to know these things and has learned about the house from the housekeeper.
There's a couple things to this. One, I think, like, it shows, like, the landed gentry cares less about the grandeur of their lives than the people around them because it's just the air they breathe.
Yeah.
But it's also remember Pemberley, how Darcy's housekeeper shows them all around the house?
Yeah.
Obviously, Darcy knows his grounds very well because he's Darcy.
Yeah.
But the housekeepers are often giving tours of these grand manor homes, and it is not just that they wait on the people around them. If you're a housekeeper or a steward, you are like
Right.
a professional of this home.
Yeah.
So you're going to know a lot about the history of the home as
Mhm.
well, because you've had to be very good at what you do to get to that place. And it is a pretty esteemed servant's position.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just thought it was interesting that Mrs. Rushworth asked to like learn those things too, so that she could give her own tours of the house
Hmm.
because you wouldn't think that she would need to or
Nope.
want to.
You do not think so, but yet here we are.
Yet here we are.
We're the servants no more.
So, giving the tour, she is mostly talking to Fanny and Miss Crawford, but Fanny is the only one listening because Miss Crawford is bored. And there are no good views out the windows. Henry's like standing by the windows and tutting, being like, this isn't good. They visit more rooms whose only purpose is, quote, to contribute to the window tax and find employment for housemaids, i.e., they don't serve a purpose like functionally. And then they get to the chapel. And Fanny is disappointed. She finds it boring. There's nothing awful, nothing melancholy, nothing grand about this chapel. No signs that a Scottish monarch sleeps below. Oh, I wanted to look that up. Hang on.
Oh,
Oh, you got it. Okay.
well, I know the answer to this.
Yeah.
So because I used to work in Georgian churches,
Oh, great.
they used to bury people
Uh-huh.
in the churches. Like their grave sites would be in the church floor,
Right.
and that's like a greatest honor. The holiest place one can be buried is inside the church
I
or
see.
on the grounds around it if you're like second tier. So to say no Scottish monarch sleeps below, it means there's nobody like grand that has been buried in this church.
I see. Yeah, in
Yeah.
this church on these people's property.
But like you would expect it to be like, Mr. Rushworth one day would be buried there.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I see. Edmund says, well, this chapel is more recent. It's only for the family. It's not going to be grand like the big ones in the cities.
No, and also I think it's noteworthy that everyone's very impressed with the rest of the house, and the chapel is a bit of an afterthought.
Yes,
Mm.
because we're about to talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
Mrs. Rushworth is telling them the history of the chapel and says that it used to be used both morning and evening, but her old husband, Rushworth Sr., stopped that practice. And Miss Crawford says, well, every generation has its improvements. Uh-oh.
This is one of those moments where, like, when you're like flirting with someone and then they say something really out of pocket, and
Yeah,
you're just like,
you're like,
oh,
"Oh, no."
God, we have a difference in values.
Yes. That's what this entire chapter is about.
Yeah, we should talk about that.
So Fanny disagrees with Miss Crawford and says that a family gathering together regularly for prayer is an essential part of a household. And Miss Crawford laughs at this and says, sure, it does really good to force all the servants to prayer while the family make excuses to stay away. And Edmund's like, well, I don't think that's what Fanny means. And I think that they have different ideas of family and different upbringings and like styles of being together with their families. Because you can imagine like Fanny before coming at least to the Bertrams and even maybe after coming to the Bertrams, like, but before coming to the Bertrams, she had this big family that kind of loved each other and maybe prayed together.
So I think that that's a good question. First, I don't know that I would say her life in Portsmouth was necessarily all that much healthier a family dynamic than her
Sure.
life in Mansfield. We don't know yet. All we know is that she was terrified to leave Portsmouth, where she was the beloved sibling to many, and that she loves her brother William, that her mother didn't have a lot of money to feed her, and that her father's a drunk.
Oh, true.
But it is true that Fanny has clearly Christian values
Mm-hmm.
as a person. And it's also clear that Edmund espouses Christian values heavily. So this is something they have in common
Yes.
about what they think is correct.
And I think what they've also probably in their family, like, put into practice.
Yes.
Miss Crawford says, well, it's better to let people pray whenever they want rather than like gathering them 2 times a day. And she imagines that the old family who used to live here would be thrilled to know that one day they would be able to sleep in if they had a headache and not be yelled at for missing chapel. And she says they would have been sitting here pretending to pray, but thinking about other things, especially if the chaplain was not worth looking at. Girl.
Yeah. She's so scandalous.
She really is. And she doesn't give a fuck. Like, she's just saying all this.
No, she is willing to put that all out there and not think about what the consequences of saying that would be.
She is an interesting person. So there's an awkward silence.
Mm-hmm.
And Fanny is fuming because Fanny is a little bit, she's got to stick up her butt.
Yeah, I think we can say that. So let's take a quick minute to say Fanny is our sweet girl. She was taken from her family at a young age. It has formed so much of who she is as a person.
Mm-hmm.
She's sweet.
Yes.
She's caring. She's quiet and steadfast. She is so uptight.
She's got to stick all the way up there.
That is a very uptight lady.
Yeah.
And I think it is really, really interesting that Jane Austen is giving us an uptight heroine.
She kind of reminds me of me when I was in elementary school, like big stickler for the rules and got really upset if people didn't follow the rules. Even if I'm not happy about following the rules, I'm like, I put in the effort to follow the rules. Why aren't you following the rules?
Yeah, it's like, why am I'm supposed to be getting my reward because I did things correctly
and my cousin doesn't love me. Yeah. I'm being Fanny. I don't have a crush on my cousin. I need to clarify that was in character.
And my first cousin, with whom I grew up, does not have a crush on me, even though I like Jesus as much as he does.
Yeah, we both love Jesus.
We both love Jesus.
Yes. Edmund says, your lively mind can hardly be serious, even on serious subjects.
Which, like, Jane Austen notes that he has a moment of, like, a scandal on his face and then goes into saying that and is like,
making excuses for her.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
He says if people's minds are prone to wandering, the way that she's describing, would they really be more focused praying in a closet by themselves than they would be in a room with everyone else? And she says yes, because there's less to distract them. Plus, they could stop whenever they want. It wouldn't go on for hours. And Edmund thinks if someone's mind struggles in the chapel, it would find ways to distract itself in a closet. He thinks that being in the company of others also focused on prayer is actually helpful. And he does agree that the services are too long, which, fair. Julia then yells out for everyone to look at Mr. Rushworth and Maria standing at the altar like they're going to be married. Mr. Crawford, I don't know how close Maria and Mr. Rushworth are standing, but Mr. Crawford mutters to Maria, I do not like to see Miss Bertram so near the altar.
I don't think Mr. Rushworth hears that.
No, I got literal shivers down my spine.
Explain those.
That was sexy. It was sexy.
Hot energy?
Yes, he has hot energy. Listen, they call him a short king. He is 5'9". To me, that's not short.
It's not that short.
Okay,
no.
Are all the men tall in this time period?
Yeah, well, no, they're not even, but it's just that the Bertrams themselves are quite tall.
Oh, right.
If we remember. So Edmund, Tom, Maria, and Julia are all quite tall. Fanny is quite short. And Henry Crawford, I guess, is kind of a short king.
By comparison, yeah. I do not like to see Miss Bertram so near the altar. It's just like...
dangerous shit, though.
Yes. And her response is weird. She asks him if he would give her away. Now, could mean give her away like in the place of her father, like do the honors of giving her away. But the double entendre being like, would you give me up?
Yes. And what we're seeing here is that Maria is starting to maybe put another iron into the stove.
Another bow in her bonnet or whatever it was.
A bow in her, she's got another arrow notched in her bow.
Yeah. she's got her Crawford feelings.
Yeah.
And he says, "I'm afraid I would do it very awkwardly." I had a moment where I'm like, "Are they actually having an affair?"
I mean, Jane Austen, this is pretty spicy.
Yeah.
This is remember, this is like, we're in Jane Austen times, not Bridgerton. So this is a little I'm not going to confirm or deny anything about the interactions between Mariah and Henry Crawford. Suffice it to say that she seems to be interested in Henry more physically, spiritually, sexually, if not financially, than her
Mhm.
other suitor, who is in fact her fiance.
Right. And even if they're not having an affair, they're both aware that they are flirting.
Yeah, so this is not just accidental impropriety. This is not Emma Woodhouse flirting with Mr. Elton by accident.
Right.
This is knowing
Exactly.
flirtation.
Julia then pops up in between them and says she wishes they could just get married right now. And she gets everyone's
Wonder why Julia wants them to get married right away.
right. She gets everyone's attention, including the Rushworths, being like, shouldn't they get married right now? And everyone's like, oh, yeah, it'll be a really happy event whenever it takes place. But they do need to wait for Thomas to come back.
Yes, they do.
And then Julia says, if only Edmund were in orders now.
To which Mary Crawford has her own little record scratch moment.
She goes, ordained? What, are you to be a clergyman?
Whoops.
And he says, yes. And she says, if I had known, I would have spoken of the cloth with more respect. And then changes the subject.
Yes, she does.
The whole thing is very awkward.
Yeah, it's deeper than awkward. It's a little bit of a bubble pop for everybody, a bubble burst
Yeah.
moment where it's like, oh, that is what Edmund Bertram is in his core, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And Mariah is she's like awkward, annoyed. She says we should go, and they all leave.
Mhm.
Mrs. Rushworth wants to continue the tour, but Mr. Rushworth wants to show them the grounds. And Mrs. Norris is starting to try to organize carriages for them to all go see the grounds, and the young people just simply walk outside. And so Mrs. Rushworth is like, suppose we go this way and follow them. The young people are all being a little bit rude, in my opinion. Mrs. Rushworth wants to show them the wilderness, but Mr. Crawford wants to explore their immediate surroundings. He finds a terrace with a good view of the grounds, and he thinks he can go look at, what needs to change.
Mhm.
And he's going to bring Lady Bertram and Mr. Rushworth with him. Edmund, Miss Crawford, and Fanny are by themselves, and they stumble upon Henry, Lady Bertram, and Mr. Rushworth, but they don't feel like examining the grounds. So they keep walking while Mrs. Rushworth, Mrs. Norris, and Julia are far behind. Julia being incredibly bitter about the situation.
Yes.
So these are the three groups of three that we have.
Yes, we do. We have Henry, Rushworth, Mariah
Mhm.
in what we would call a Nightmare Blunt rotation of sorts. Then we have Mary, Edmund, and Fanny, the you along with me crowd.
Mhm.
Then we have Norris, Mrs. Rushworth, and Julia, aka the torment of Julia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Poor Julia. Not really.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like just hang out with an old lady for 2 minutes. It's fine.
Yeah. She should be more annoyed that she has to hang out with her aunt who sucks.
Oh, what? Do you not like Mrs. Norris?
No.
Jane Austen's most likable creation.
So, Miss Crawford is hot and she wants to go into the woods to cool off. But she's like, oh, but the door is locked because I guess there's a door from the terrace to the
Mhm.
wilderness. But it turns out the door is not locked. So they go through, but it's foreshadowing.
Mm.
They walk into the woods where it is cool and shady, and Miss Crawford asks Edmund about his plans to be a clergyman, bringing it back up. She says it's a surprise to her. He's like, why is it a surprise? I need a job, and you can tell I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a soldier, I'm not a sailor, so I might as well be a clergyman. And she's like, usually for second sons, an uncle or a grandfather provides some sort of monetary something or a living that you wouldn't have to be a clergyman. And he's like, well, not me.
This is a really interesting conversation because if you recall, her initial target was Big T,
Right.
the
The first son.
the to be Lord of Mansfield, and she kind of falls for Edmund and then says, "We'll figure out on the back end what your situation is. But surely you're the son of like a very wealthy man, so surely you'll be fine." And he will be, but it just so happens he's planning a profession and one she finds wildly unappealing.
Mhm. I also think it's kind of not kind of, it's a very privileged point of view to be like, "Well, don't you have a grandfather and an uncle to provide for you?"
I guess it kind of is a privileged point of view, but it isn't crazy for her to have thought that's a possibility.
No, but, like, the fact of the matter is, like, some people wanna work. They don't wanna just be provided for.
I mean, yeah, but I think like what we're seeing here is it's the economics of dating in Jane Austen, grand the sound effect. She was gunning for a more advantageous match
Mhm.
where her husband wouldn't have a profession. But what we're seeing here is sort of a two-tier distaste. One is the desire to have a husband who's a gentleman
Mhm.
and one who is landed gentry and owns a big estate. Barring that, of course, he should take on one of the esteemed professions. But what she's saying is, of all the esteemed professions, clergyman?
Right. She says that usually clergyman falls to, like, the youngest son where all of the other professions have already been chosen by his older brothers. And Edmund's like, "You don't think anyone ever chooses to be a clergyman?" And she says, "Not really. There's no distinction to be gained, and a clergyman is nothing." Rude. Edmund says, "Well, a clergyman is the guardian of religion and morals and can only be nothing if he disregards his own importance and acts out of line." And she says, "They're not that important. People only see them in the pulpit. Like, they're not out in the world. They can't possibly have influence on a society at large." And he says, "You're talking about London, but I'm talking about the rest of the nation." It's interesting. The city bubble that he's describing here is kind of like the opposite of what I think of as a city bubble because he's like, oh, actually, I guess it's the same.
It is weirdly similar to, how things are in the United States today.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, so he's describing like in London, there's so many people around, like people don't put as much stock in like the clergy
Mhm.
as in a small town when the clergyman is like kind of like a guiding force of the town and like you see him and his behavior and his like his manners,
Yeah,
his conduct.
it's a pillar of a community,
Yeah.
and it's a gathering space for a community, and it
Mhm.
is where people go for their guidance, whereas, like, if you're in London, obviously, there are highfalutin clergymen there, but
Mhm.
there's so much else to do and so many other great men who sort of draw together the society in London that it is not necessarily like the town is built around the church.
Right. And he's saying also that like because it's a small town and he lives in the town, people will watch his conduct and model their own conduct after the clergyman's conduct. So like he's more of an inspiration for them in that way as well. But what's interesting in terms of like thinking of the city bubble is like at first I was like, well, cities are nowadays like very liberal
Mhm.
compared to like the rural whatever. And I think it's actually he's saying the same thing.
Well, I mean, I don't think he's saying it in, like, the brand of politics
He's
because that's
not.
something we impress upon it in the United States, but it's like country towns are more dispersed and
Mhm.
less concentrated than cities are, and, like, people in rural England gather together from the towns once a week for church
Right.
or, more than that, depending, and that is sort of one of the great gathering social holes of the town because it's one of the like, when you live so far apart in a time without cars, that is one of the places where everyone gathers together.
That's such a good
Um
point. Like in other Austen books, we see them gathering at church so often
Mhm.
until they go into one of the cities, and then we see them gathering at like balls.
Exactly.
Mm. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So Miss Crawford thinks that the city is a good sampling of the nation, and he says we do not look in great cities for our best morality, which I thought was interesting and true.
Yeah, it's a lot of what Jane Austen's thinking about these things,
Yeah.
but also it is, something I could hear another person say.
Hmm.
I wouldn't necessarily agree with it,
No, that's
but
why like, what's interesting to me is, like, I think of cities as, like, having very good and moral people in them, but he's thinking of it in a very religious context where cities are, like, where the debauchery happens
Yes.
versus, like, the upright, religious, pious people living in the countryside.
Good, strong Christian family values in the countryside.
Yes, which scare me, but
Yes.
don't scare him.
And I think are encapsulated in this book in the form of Mary Crawford. And I actually think we're going to have a conversation about it in the study questions. I think Mary Crawford is, to me, a really interesting character to read in the 21st
Oh,
century.
yeah. Because I relate more to her. Like, I agree with her more than I agree with him.
Well, the thing is, like, there are moments where she's appalling. Like, she has really immoral and amoral moments
Yeah.
in the book, but a lot of what she says is not wrong, and a lot of her cleverness and her views on things are things that I personally connect with more, like you are connecting with more. So it's kind of a mixed bag on that front, and I think it's the same with Fanny, where it's like I get annoyed by her feeling furious at the implication that people wouldn't want to pray twice a day.
Mhm.
Like, and I'm like, okay, Fanny, calm down.
Right.
But I mean, she holds true to her own self and her morals. And I want to know what Jane Austen's thinking about it. And at the same time, I don't think it's like intensely important that we think purely from Austen's intent here.
Right.
But Jane Austen famously wrote characters who were not always beholden to the norm of the time and the upright morals of the time. In particular, I'm thinking about a Marianne Dashwood or an Emma Woodhouse.
Right.
And she has compassion for those characters, even in their moments of mistake or flaw.
Yeah.
And so I kind of think it's a cool book for that reason, because you have Mary and Fanny kind of giving two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
And Austen is not willing to, I think, deprive us of some of the pleasure of Mary Crawford, even if a lot of what she does is stuff that we don't like. So it's, I don't know. There's a lot to unpack there, but
Mhm.
if any of that makes sense.
It does. It does. And Fanny is over here agreeing with Edmund, and Miss Crawford is like, yeah, you've convinced Fanny. And he's like, but I want to convince Miss Crawford.
Yeah. And Fanny's like, here, Edmund, I agree that we should be going to church all the time and that the morals in the city are deplorable.
Yeah.
Why don't you love me?
Why don't you love me? Miss Crawford says he's never going to convince her and suggests that he goes into law. And he goes, go into law with as much ease as I was told to go into this wilderness. And she's like, okay, now you're going to say something about the law being a greater wilderness than this wilderness. And he says, no, I'm not witty like that. He says something about a bon mot, meaning a witty remark. Then awkward silence falls until Fanny says she's tired and wants to sit down. And he takes her arm and he offers his other arm to Miss Crawford, who's like, I'm not tired, but she takes it anyway.
And he's like, oh, you're so light.
Yeah.
So dainty.
I hated this. He was like, oh my God, women.
Oh my God. He's like, I don't even need to, like, you're light as a feather here. And Mary's like, I'm barely tired. I'm holding my whole self up right now. Oh my God. Edmund has just like negative riz. It is fascinating to me that these two women who are both eligible in their own rights are just like, this man. And I'm
Right.
like, this man?
This man? Says me.
You are also drawn in by his negative riz.
I am. So she says that they've walked a mile, and he says it's not been half a mile. And the quote is, he was not yet so much in love as to measure distance or reckon time with feminine lawlessness. Gag, but also kind of funny.
That's a good Jane Austen line, because obviously she doesn't think females are lawless.
Yeah. She's like, no, we've taken a very windy path, so we've gone farther than you think. And he's like, we've only been walking 15 minutes. Do you think we've been walking 4 miles an hour? And she goes, oh, do not attack me with your watch. A watch is always too fast or too slow. I cannot be dictated to by a watch. And then they come out to a ha-ha, which I Googled. And a ha-ha is a sunken fence defined as a recessed landscape design element that creates a vertical barrier, particularly on one side, while preserving an uninterrupted view of the landscape beyond from the other side. The name comes from viewers' surprise when seeing the construction. They go, ha-ha! So basically, like, the land dips down, and then there's a wall, and then basically it's like at the same, it's kind of like a little moat. It's the same height on either end of the fence.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's kind of like a little like valley.
Yeah.
With like a brick siding on one of the hills.
Like a moat. So like if it rains, water's going to go down there basically. But yeah, uninterrupted view while dividing two landscape features. Edmund comments on how tired Fanny looks and asks why she didn't say something earlier, but like she literally just fucking did. She said, I'm tired. Can I sit? He takes her arm. Then he tells Miss Crawford that everything except riding exhausts Fanny. And she's like, why did you let me steal her horse so many days in a row then?
Great fucking point, Mary.
Yeah. Like, yeah. Edmund says Miss Crawford is more sensible of Fanny's needs than he is. Yeah. Once again, yes. Miss Crawford then says it makes sense that Fanny is tired. They've been oohing and ahhing at the house and the grounds, admiring what they do not care for. It's a bore and exhausting, and Fanny must just be exhausted from it. And Fanny's like, nah, I just need to sit down and look at the greenery. Like, she's not even going to engage with all that. They sit, and then Miss Crawford says resting fatigues her and she needs to get up. And she's like, I'm going to go through that iron gate, which is like to get to the other side of the ha-ha. Edmund gets up too and says that they can look back on the walk and see it wasn't as far as she thought. So they're going to go off and examine it. And Fanny wants to come, but they tell her to rest. So she sits there and she thinks, oh, they care about me. They want me to rest. Well, really, they're going to go canoodle in the bushes.
And this is where I'm like, Mary.
Yeah.
This is like the back and forth I have, where she's like, most of the time I enjoy the hell out of Mary. And then she does something where I'm like, that's such a dick move.
It is.
The horse is bad. This is so annoying to me.
I think this is worse than the horse.
Yeah.
Because you're just leaving her to sit in a
place she doesn't know.
Yeah, she can't get back on her own, so she's just going to be sitting here.
Yeah, you've just left her to sit on a ledge.
And he was like, I'll be back in a few minutes. Like, they're just going to go examine, like, walk along the edge of the ha-ha. And we'll get into it because it continues on for far longer than he says it's going to. Which brings us to chapter 10.
Yes, it does.
So Fanny's sitting there for 20 minutes before she starts to think maybe they abandoned her. Which is just, it's really sad. She's just by herself.
Yeah, and I mean, like, sitting, she doesn't have a book.
Right.
She doesn't have a phone.
Right.
She's just sitting.
She doesn't have cross-stitch with her.
No, she's nothing to do, so she's just sitting. And 20 minutes is, like, fine to admire landscape. But at that point, like, you're going to start getting a little bored.
Yes. Eventually, she hears voices, and she's like, oh, they're coming back for me. But it's Mariah, Mr. Rushworth, and Mr. Crawford.
Which no one wants to hang with.
Right. Again, nightmare blunt rotation.
Yes. They're
like, oh my God, you've been abandoned. Which, like, is kind of going back to what you said about, like, when other people see how she's treated.
It's like, oh no, but then we'll get to it. They fucking do the same thing.
Exactly. So they sit down next to her and they continue their conversation about home improvements. And I liked the note saying that Mr. Rushworth had no original thoughts.
Yeah, the way that's written is spectacular, where it's yeah.
Nothing was fixed on, but Henry Crawford was full of ideas and projects, and generally speaking, whatever was proposed was immediately approved, first by her, then by Mr. Rushworth, whose principal business seemed to be to hear the others, and who scarcely risked an original thought of his own, beyond a wish that they had seen his friend Smith's place.
Which also is not an original thought.
Nope. Now, Mariah wants to go through the gate, the iron gate that the others had talked about but not gone through. And Henry sees a knoll on the other side that would give him a good view of everything. So they go, but the gate is locked. Mr. Rushworth is like, fuck, I didn't bring the key with me. And he immediately is like, I'll go get it. And he runs off to go get the key. While he's gone, Mariah asks Henry if the place is worse than he expected. She says, like, it's worse than you expected, right? And he says, no, it's actually better, grander, more complete in its style, even if that style isn't the best. And he thinks he will never like it better than he does now. Like, he thinks it can't actually be improved upon. It has a sort of charm. And Mariah's embarrassed for having talked shit, but she recovers. She says he's a man of the world and sees with the eyes of the world. So if the world will find it improved, so will he. He says something then that I think might be translated as, I'm not like other boys.
Okay, and what is it?
He says, I am afraid I am not quite so much the man of the world as might be good for me in some points. My feelings are not quite so evanescent, nor my memory of the past under such easy dominion as one finds to be the case with men of the world.
Oh, I think he's saying, well, no, I think he's saying you're over complimenting me.
Okay.
So like, oh, I'm not so much man of the world. I'm a little silly boy.
Yeah, that's what I was getting. Like, I'm a little quirky.
I'm a little silly boy.
Yeah. There's another awkward silence before, and I wrote awkward silence at least 3 times in this chapter.
And also, like, it stands to be reminded that Fanny is right there.
She's right there.
She is just, like, hanging out.
Yeah. A third wheel, if you will.
Yeah.
Mariah then comments on how happy he seemed in the car with Julia. And he brushes it off, saying Julia loves to laugh. And Mariah's like, do you think she's more lighthearted than me? And he says she's more easily amused. And then says that makes her better company, I guess. Like flirting. Being mean to her by flirting.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, naturally, I am as lively as Julia, but I have more to think of now. To me, this is saying,
I'm a grown-up.
I'm engaged.
What are you going to do about it, sir?
Yeah.
Oh, what are you thinking?
I just think that this girl needs to get her priorities in order.
She needs to get her shit together.
She's like, I have 2 men on my heart.
Well, we're going to get to it. It is girl. Girl.
Literally all my notes say are girl.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's just like an all caps girl.
Yeah.
Anybody at Mariah Bertram.
Yeah. He says there are certain scenarios where high spirits would be improper. Flirting when you're engaged, for example. But says that she has no cause for low spirits because look how good her situation is. Look around her. It's a beautiful day. And she's like, yes, the sun is shining, the birds are singing, but the gate is locked. And the ha-ha is giving me a feeling of restraint. She's a caged bird. She actually describes herself as a caged bird.
Yeah, it's a pretty hefty metaphor on Jane Austen's part as well.
Because she's engaged.
There's a wrought iron impediment to what Mariah and Henry Crawford want in this circumstance.
Yeah.
So what are they going to do about it?
They're waiting for Mr. Rushworth with the key, I guess.
Yeah.
Actually, she thinks they're waiting for Mr. Rushworth, but Henry says, well, you don't need to rely on him to set you free. You could just jump the gate.
She could just jump the gate.
He says, if you can allow yourself to consider it not prohibited. Basically saying, unless you're scared, getting in trouble. And she says, I'm not scared. Let's go. He'll be back soon anyway. He'll come find us. And Henry's like, yeah, and Fanny can tell him that we're on the knoll when he comes. And Fanny is, again, right there.
Fanny is like dealing with all of this. And like, I think we Jane Austen scholars that we are.
Yeah, scholars.
Yeah, know how wildly inappropriate this is.
Yes.
And Fanny has proven, as we've said, to have a stick up her butt. Love her.
Stick up her butt.
But stick up her butt.
Yeah.
So she's just having like an aneurysm watching this shit.
Yeah, she's like, first of all, you're engaged.
Second of all, unchaperoned.
Yeah, you guys cannot go off by yourself. Third of all, you're gonna rip your dress. Also, I was having a hard time visualizing this gate, so I am excited to see like.
Oh, I have a picture.
Oh, great. Oh.
So I picture Fanny sitting on like the side right here, kind of like looking out at the view.
Yeah.
And looking up at the manor, and the rest of them kind of like hop over, because it's not like, listen, in my youth I did once climb a fence, and not hurt myself too bad, which was good. But this isn't like Mariah's like climbing a 10-foot fence.
Right. She's kind of, well, he like suggests like she shimmies around the side of it,
which
I see now.
Yeah.
Becca's showing me a picture of what this might have looked like. And Fanny's like, oh my God, you're gonna rip your skirt. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. As she's saying, don't do it. It's happening.
You know what this is also giving? This is so specific, but when you're young and you're like the designated driver and your friend's drunk too much.
Yeah.
And they just keep running away from you.
Yep.
It's giving that.
Yes. Precisely.
Yeah.
So Fanny is abandoned again, but this time she is like kind of pissed. Like she is feeling upset that she's been abandoned twice and angry at Henry Crawford for convincing Mariah to do something
so improper.
And as she's watching them, they take a, quote, circuitous route to the knoll, and somehow, despite the knoll being on the other side of the fence, they are out of sight, out of mind.
Huh.
So Fanny's sitting alone in the woods, and she could almost think that Edmund and Miss Crawford had left the woods, but that it was impossible for Edmund to forget her so entirely. He couldn't possibly. Immediately does. Julia then runs up behind her, panting, and she's like, where is everyone? So Fanny explains, and Julia's like, okay, well, I'm going too. And Fanny's like, wait, no, Mr. Rushworth is going to be back literally any second now. And Julia's like, I've seen enough of that family for the day. She says, quote, why, child, I have but this moment escaped his horrible mother. Calling her, 1, a child, 2, calling his mother horrible, which I disagree with.
Respectfully, Molly's Mrs. Rushworth stan.
Yes. Julia then complains about how she had to sit there being all composed while being annoyed to no end, and she wishes they could have switched places, her and Fanny, saying Fanny always somehow manages to keep out of these scrapes. Fanny is like, this is unjust in her mind. She doesn't say that out loud. She thinks that it's unjust, but she moves on, asking Julia if she saw Mr. Rushworth. And Julia says, yes, he was running like his life depended on it.
Poor Mr. Rushworth.
Truly, I'm picturing the way that he runs too. Like, I'm going to have to take a video of myself running the way that I'm picturing him running because
It's like a little plod.
I'm thinking more of like a very kind of mechanical leap.
Oh, I was picturing more of a little jaunt, like a little jog.
Yeah, we'll do a Mr. Rushworth comparison video.
Yeah. After this, we'll just really quickly record both of us running how we think Mr. Rushworth would be running.
Fanny thinks it's a pity he's gone through all this trouble for nothing. And Julia says, that's not my problem, and then jumps the fence.
Sigh.
Fanny tries to call after her, saying, did you see Edmund and Miss Crawford? But Julia ignores her. Now Fanny is anxious because she is going to be the one to have to tell Mr. Rushworth that they have all just simply jumped the fence after he sprinted home to get the key. And he arrives 5 minutes later, which she then has to do exactly that. He's obviously hurt and mortified. And he goes and he stands by the gate just staring at it. And Fanny's like, well, they're at the knoll. And he's like, I don't even want to go now. By the time I get there, they're probably going to have moved on. And I've gotten enough walking in today. And I just I really sympathize with him at this moment because, you know, when you if you're in a group and you're asked to go do something, you're like, yeah, I'll go do it. And then you come back and nobody actually ended up needing that thing anymore. And you're like, why did I do that?
Yeah. Or when you're hanging out with people and then they leave without telling you.
Yeah.
That sucks.
All of it sucks. It's very relatable. I feel bad for Mr. Rushworth. He then plops down dejectedly next to Fanny, and she doesn't know what to say aside from that she's sorry. And he says they might as well have waited for him. And Fanny says, Mariah thought you would follow him. And he says, I wouldn't have to follow her if she'd waited. And Fanny's like, I can't argue with that. So they just sit in awkward silence. And then he asks, what does everyone see in Mr. Crawford?
Oh, he's sensing the cuck of it all.
He is sensing the cuck. And Fanny's like, well, I don't find him handsome. And Rushworth agrees that he is an undersized man at 5'9". Not handsome.
Relax.
Yeah.
Relax, Mr. Rushworth.
Yeah. What are you, 5'10"?
Jesus.
The Crawfords, he says, are no addition to their society, and they were better off without both of them. And Fanny can't disagree again, so she says nothing. He then says they would have figured something else out if he had made any difficulty about going to get the key. Like if he hadn't immediately sprinted off, but he did because he would do anything for Mariah. And Fanny says this was very obliging of him, and she's sure that he walked as fast as he could, but, you know, it was a long walk and people got antsy. And he says he just wishes he had had the key already. And she says, you should really go join them. They'll be talking about improvements for the, landscaping, and they need you there. And he says, you're right. I should. And then he lets himself out with the key and leaves. She found herself more successful in sending away than in retaining a companion.
On my own. No.
She then decides, you know what? I'm going to go find Edmund and Miss Crawford. So she sets off on her own.
Good for you, Fanny. It only took you a fucking hour.
Yeah, a literal
to stand up for yourself.
She hears Miss Crawford laughing and she finds them. It turns out, as soon as they had walked away from her, they had seen a side exit and had gone out and found the avenue, which is literally the only thing Fanny wanted to see while she was here, was the avenue of trees. And they had gone and been canoodling in it. They didn't realize how long they had been gone because they'd been having so much fun. They thought they were only gone 15 minutes, but it has been an hour. And Fanny's only consolation is that Edmund says he had wished that she were there, but he knew that she was tired, so he didn't come back for her. So she's depressed. The three of them then decide to go back to the house, and they run into Mrs. Rushworth and Mrs. Norris getting ready to go into the wilderness. Mrs. Norris has had a very productive morning. She's gotten a special cream cheese from the housekeeper. She's diagnosed the gardener's grandson's mystery illness and promised him a charm for it, I think like a cure. And in return, she got a bit of heath, a heath being a kind of plant, and the illness that she's diagnosed being ague or malaria. Probably not, I'll say.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
Yeah. They all decide to go to the house together. No wilderness for the older ladies, I guess. And they all sit and chat until dinner. Mariah, Julia, and the gentleman come in a little bit later, and it turns out that their excursion was not all that great. Julia and Mr. Rushworth are both being salty. probably because Mariah and Henry are flirting with each other in front of them. And Henry is like trying to restore general good humor by
Mhm.
joking and being jovial at dinner. But soon enough, the carriage comes to get them. Mrs. Norris, in addition to her cream cheese, etc., has also gotten some pheasant's eggs. And she's thanking Mrs. Rushworth while Henry is coming up to Julia and asking her to sit next to him again, which
Hmm.
puts her back in a good mood.
Yes.
Mariah is a little hurt by this, but, quote, her conviction of being really the one preferred comforted her.
Hmm.
Girl!
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 Mrs. Norris says to Fanny that she seems to have had a good day. You should be really grateful for having been allowed to go on this trip. Well, Fanny's had the worst day of everyone, I would say. Mariah is grumpy, and because of this, her filter is kind of light, I think. And she says, I think you have done pretty well for yourself, ma'am. Your lap seems full of good things, and here's a basket of something between us, which has been knocking my elbow unmercifully. And Mrs. Norris then takes the basket, puts it in her lap, gives Fanny the cream cheese to hold. She's like, oh, the housekeeper begged me to take this cheese.
I'm sure.
Apparently, the housekeeper, Mrs. Whitaker, keeps a very good home, and Mariah feels a little smug about this. She's like, yeah, she does. That's my house, despite the fact that I'm in love with another man.
Well, that's the thing. Well, Mariah is torn.
She is.
Good house, good.
Dick.
Yeah, I was gonna say good dick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She asks what else Mrs. Norris has sponged, and Mrs. Norris is like, I haven't sponged it. The eggs were forced upon me.
Oh God, yeah.
She says she's going to hatch them. The housekeeper knew she lived alone and thought it would be good for her to keep pheasants. Now, she has taken these eggs from the pheasants and is going to stick them under a hen until they hatch. Is that a thing that can happen?
I guess. I mean, how you don't have like an incubator back in the day.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess it makes sense. It could go under any hen's warm bottom.
Exactly.
But I thought when she got the eggs, I was like, oh, those are for her to cook.
Nope,
But
they are for her to hatch little chicks.
So everyone's exhausted. And when Mrs. Norris finishes talking, they all just sit in silence and ruminate on whether the day had afforded more pleasure than pain. And for most of them, I imagine it was more pain.
Seems right. That brings us to the end of these chapters. Quite the action-packed sequence.
Yes.
And that brings us to the patron study questions. Listeners, once again, if you would like to ask questions of us as we're reading through this book, you can join our Patreon at the $15 tier and submit your questions when Molly posts the Google Doc before it records each week. And then we'll ask your questions and answer them on air. So, starting with Avi, in these chapters, Edmund's calling to the church is a major topic, especially for Mary Crawford. How do you think this will play out in the book, and how does Edmund compare to other clergymen in Jane Austen's novel? I have a very similar question to this one, so we'll take it sort of in stride with my study question, which is about Austen's characterization of the profession.
Mm-hmm. So to start with how it compares to other clergymen in other novels, I feel like Edmund's the first clergyman. Well, okay, Edward.
Yeah, but with Edward, first of all, he only takes orders later in the book, and
Yeah.
it's not like his intention at the
Right.
beginning of the book. He's a gentleman who is going to inherit an estate at the beginning of the book.
Yeah.
He later ends up as a clergyman because that's the living he can get after he's disowned.
Yeah. So let's take Edward out of
Yeah.
the mix and compare Edmund to Mr. Collins, Mr. Elton. Is there one in Persuasion?
Not a major character. Henry Hayter is like a curate, so
Oh yeah.
he's like
I
maybe
like Henry
headed that
Hayter.
way. Yeah.
But Collins and Elton like are both so annoying and
Pompous.
a little like malicious at times. Well, obviously Elton is very malicious, and Collins, it could be debated, and we have debated to no end. Edmund is the first clergyman that chose the profession and also seems to be an actual major love interest, and one that like we as the reader sympathize with and are maybe attracted to.
Yeah, he's our first leading man clergyman.
Mhm.
And I find it to be a weird comparison. I think about the Collins letter
Mhm.
that he sends after Lydia
Yeah.
runs off with Wickham and about how sad it is that their lives are over, essentially.
Yeah.
And he feels for them, but goodbye. And that letter makes my blood boil every time I read the book. I know Collins is kind of a comical character, but that one really gets to me.
Yeah, no, he can be really awful.
He's very pompous. Elton is very ambitious,
Yeah.
and takes on orders to kind of climb up in the world,
Mhm.
which is a little different. And Edmund's doing it for the love of the craft more than anything else.
Yeah, and for, like, his belief system, like, he's clearly very religious and, like,
Mhm.
he believes in this stuff and he believes that, like, he has what it takes to lead a congregation and a town.
Does he?
I think so, because I think that he's charismatic enough
Mhm.
that at least for the first couple episodes of this podcast, I was following him.
Mhm.
And, like, he also the way he talked about it in this episode, like, I agreed with him.
Yeah. So, I mean, that goes to another point, which is Mary's aversion to the
Mhm.
fact that he's gonna be a clergyman. We talked about this on one hand, the fact that he's not gonna inherit an estate becomes very clear in this chapter, and on the other hand, of all the professions he could have picked that would have been, suitable,
Mhm.
clearly he's most drawn to being a clergyman.
And Mary thinks that there's no way to, like, raise yourself up in that profession or gain distinction. And for him, it's like he doesn't need the distinction. But for her, she's like, where can you go with that?
Yeah, and not only that, it's kind of dull.
Mhm. And she hates organized religion, which, like, I get.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, girl, yeah.
Yeah, like, I if there's anything that I'm gonna agree with her on, it's that.
It's a skepticism of the church, which I should say Jane Austen didn't really share. She was pretty Christian,
Mhm.
but she does have skepticism for a certain type of forced morality that
Yeah.
comes up in her other books. And it's interesting to see that in this book, it is sort of front and center.
Yeah.
The morality, the like propriety of society, and it's being tested
Yeah.
at different edges all over the place. I don't think Mary Crawford sees herself as a clergyman's wife.
No.
She can't be a Charlotte or an Augusta.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, and at the same time, I think that Edmund and Fanny would be absolutely insufferable together. Like, I'm just thinking about it now, I'm like, Fanny could totally be a clergyman's wife, but she would be so annoying about it.
I want to stick a pin in the rest of this clergyman conversation because,
Yes.
quite obviously, this is not the last we'll hear about it
Oh,
in the book.
yes. Yes.
Yeah. Question number 2. This is a question from Janae. Between Rushworth and Crawford, who, to you, is the better choice? How do you feel about this love pentagon compared to others we've seen, like, say, Louisa Henrietta Hayter Freddie?
Ah, man, this is tough because in terms of who's the better choice, obviously, Rushworth is not a horrible flirt. He is an upstanding, rich man with an estate who really wants to marry this girl that he wants. And oh yeah, I guess it also depends on for whom are we talking is he the better choice. But like I think that Rushworth is like a very sensible choice, whereas Henry Crawford is not because he wants to run around London and flirt with people.
I should say, like, economically, Economics of Jading and Jane Austen Weiss Graham, the sound effect. Henry Crawford's not a bad
No, he's
choice.
got money.
He's got money, he's got an estate.
Yes.
He's a pretty good match. That's why they're trying to force Julia and him together.
Right, but it's his personality that's the problem.
Yes.
Because he's not necessarily gonna stop flirting just because he got married.
Well, one of the cool things about this chapter to me seems to be it captures the fact that Henry has worked this magic on the 2 girls
Mhm.
where they think they're the special one.
Yeah, each of them thinks that they're the one that he's after.
Yeah. I think I would invert this question, and I'm not going to answer it in full because I don't want to spoil things down the line. But I don't know that either one of them at this point is a sensible choice for Mariah Bertram. Obviously, Mr. Rushworth has been, she's engaged to him. So obviously, she should not be behaving this way with Henry Crawford.
Mhm.
But Mr. Rushworth was a purely financial pick. There was no question about whether he was a sensible man, whether he was a nice person, whether he would be a good match for her.
Mhm.
And it was just that he's rich.
But he does seem like a nice man, and he seems like a sensible person.
I mean, it's emphasized, like, over and over again that he's kind of stupid.
Sure.
But, he is you're right, he is an advantageous match, at this point, we don't have reason to believe he's an evil person or
Right,
anything.
he might be boring, but he's not mean.
No, but he's a little stupid.
Sure.
And Edmund says this, he's not pleased that his sister went purely for money
Right.
in her choice. And I think because he's so boring and because he's a little stupid and because Mariah is a brat,
Mhm.
it opens her up to the temptation of the charisma that Henry Crawford offers her, the
That makes sense.
pull of a guy who is more challenging and alluring than
Mhm.
the guy she's picked. And so I don't know that I would say either one of them's good for Mariah. I think Mariah needs therapy, like,
Yes.
and to take a good hard look at herself rather than like either of these boys.
Yeah.
Question number 3, Linnea asks 2 questions actually, both about Edmund's speech on good manners and good principles, which come from solid doctrine. 1, does his conduct show he has underlying good principles? And 2, do you think Edmund would be a good example for his future parishioners? We kind of talked about
Yes,
it.
we've talked about 2, which is that I think that he oh, man, but actually in context of question 1, I think my answer might have changed because while I've thought that he generally has good principles, what he's doing to Fanny right now is showing that he does not. Like, you're gonna leave someone who thinks of you as her best friend in the woods for an hour and just forget about her?
Again, I think this goes to the role the Crawfords are currently playing for the Bertrams, which is the sort of temptation
Yeah,
role.
it's shaking things up for them.
Yeah, and challenging their set beliefs and principles.
Yeah, I think he has had good beliefs and principles in his life. I think that he is a religious person and believes a lot of good things about, like, how one should behave. I think that he is easily swayed from that. For example, he takes Fanny's arm when she's tired, and as soon as Miss Crawford takes his other arm, he forgets that Fanny's there. He might as well have dropped her in a ditch.
And also just like the amount of times Mary has said something naughty. And
Mhm.
I love it. I will go on the record. Mary Crawford is a lot of things and by no means a perfect character. I find her the most entertaining character to read in the books by far.
She's very funny.
But he's very drawn into like her cheeky little remarks, even though he like it goes to the conversation Edmund and Fanny had in the chapters preceding these, where Fanny was like, "She's not proper," and Edmund's like, "Right, right, not proper." But I mean, you can't blame her for this, 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 and this thing. And you can kind of see him in real time rationalizing his picks to try to fit his principles.
He's constantly making excuses for her.
Yeah. And so he's sort of like doing what he wants, but trying to fit it backwards into his framework
Yeah.
of what's good and right in the world.
Yeah, so I think that he could be a good example to his future parishioners, like, he could outwardly set a good example, but I feel like he could also easily fall off the path
Yeah.
that he's supposedly on.
And go off and find the avenue.
Yes, exactly.
Last question from our patrons is from Judith. We see Mary Crawford as a highly unlikable character through the eyes of Fanny. Is she a reliable narrator? Do you think we would feel differently about Mary as a character if she were our protagonist?
Yes.
Yes, I think this is I've said this like a couple times now,
Mhm.
and I want to be fair to Fanny. We have to remember always, this is the point we have to come back to. Fanny is a fish out of water in these chapters. Fanny is a fish out of water at Mansfield Park. She has had a crazy life where she was, shunted over to rich relatives early in life and treated kind of like shit for a long time by everyone except Edmund Bertram, who instilled in her a set of really intense principles. And she's held fast to the principles and her own heart. And I have a really deep fondness for Fanny, but she has such a stick up her butt.
Mhm.
So I want to balance those two things. And I think Mary Crawford has shown herself to be naughty in certain moments and say
Yes.
dickish things and do dickish things, like convincing Edmund to leave Fanny at a haha
Mhm.
to go canoodle with him
Yep.
for an hour.
Mhm.
And she is a do what you want kind of person, which I do kind of respect. But I have said this before and I'll say it again. She, pen to paper, her wit and her laissez faire attitude is comparable to some of our other heroines in Jane Austen's work.
Right, like, I described her in one of our episodes as Emma at the beginning of Emma.
Yes. Who is not always an upstanding citizen.
No, like, there are times that we were like, "We don't like Emma," but in the end, we love Emma, and I think that we would be rooting for Mary if she
Yeah.
was our main character, and, like, honestly, the only things that I don't like about her are the way that she makes Edmund treat Fanny.
Yes, and I think there is something to how obsessed she is with getting a guy with an estate.
Yes.
But, first of all, respect the hustle.
Yeah, I mean, it's not unusual for someone in this time
Yeah.
period to want an estate. I mean, that would be the ultimate score.
Yeah, and I think that what I like a lot about this book is there is no character that we purely are rooting for 800% of the time. I think that's purposeful because Jane Austen knows how to write eminently likable characters, and this is one of her more mature pieces of literature. So she knows that she's giving these characters certain character traits that are bad, and she doesn't spare anyone in the story. But that also means that her characters that are antagonists to her protagonists have good qualities.
Yep.
Not Norris, I mean, obviously, except the fact that she's funny to read.
Yeah.
Um, but there are characters in this book that are not purely evil, and there are characters in this book that are not purely good, and Mary Crawford is the main impediment to everything Fanny wants in this world. But first of all, it's not entirely her fault that Fanny's not getting what she wants. Second of all, Mary just serves as a foil to Fanny in both good and bad ways.
Mhm.
Because Mary will go for what she wants, and Mary is willing to speak her mind and be sharp,
Yeah.
and Fanny is, kind and selfless in a way that Mary is not. So there's a lot to unpack between the two girls, even at this point in the story, and we have so much story left.
Yeah, it's a long one,
But that's what I think about those two.
and I agree.
Anything to add?
No, I think that you've said it all really well.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
All right, that ends our patron study questions. Again, listeners, if you want to ask questions of us and have us answer them on the air while we're reading through Mansfield Park, you can join our Patreon at the $15 tier. All right, that brings us to Becca's study questions. How does Jane Austen's use of Fanny as a narrator in this portion form it, and what does it do to move the story along?
So this kind of is a good follow-up to the last one as to, like, whether Fanny's a reliable narrator,
Uh-huh.
because in this portion, like, everything we're hearing from Mary Crawford is heavily colored by Fanny's own strong convictions of, like, her beliefs in the church and her beliefs in, like, what family values are. And so she's hearing everything Mary is saying and being like, "This bitch," like, kind of silently fuming at, like, everything that she's saying, and I think being upset that Edmund is going along with it. Not that he's going along with it and saying, "Yeah, you're right," but that he's, like, having this back and forth at all. I think it moves the story along because I think it's, highlighting that this is gonna be an issue going forward between Edmund and Mary Crawford.
Mhm.
Yeah. Does that answer the question?
It does. I also want to flag that the haha sequence just generally.
Oh, yeah, the haha
Um,
sequence. Mhm.
because I think what this chapter, like specifically the last two chapters, really do with Fanny is they put her in the bystander role in a very significant way, where she is the consummate observer.
Yeah.
Again, she's so, like, put to the side by
Yep.
all the characters in this portion, but
Quite
that
literally.
means literally put to the side and abandoned, but that means she sees all of the sequences of them walking through the woods. She's kind of like our eyes on these characters coming and going from this ha-ha and in this portion of the estate, and because she's Fanny and she doesn't really say anything, they're acting pretty imprudently in front of her,
Mhm.
especially Mariah and Henry
Yeah.
act in a way that maybe they wouldn't be acting in front of other people, but because Fanny is Fanny and she's quiet and people kind of underestimate her and assume she's not there, she is getting to see everything happen. She gets insight into how deep the flirtation is currently running between Henry and Mariah, which is not great for Mariah's reputation.
Mm-mm.
She gets insight into Rushworth's angst and his feeling of inferiority towards Henry Crawford.
Yeah.
You get this bubbling tension between Mary and Edmund about him taking his orders and becoming a member of the church.
Yeah.
You get Julia sort of saying flippantly awful things about Mrs. Rushworth. Like every interaction that's happening is something that, Mrs. Norris is not privy to.
Mhm.
And the rest of the characters are not privy to, but Fanny sees all of it because
Yeah.
Fanny is overlooked.
I'm almost beginning to wonder if Fanny, despite being like quote unquote the protagonist of the story, is not going to continue, like, is not going to have her own plot line. Like, I'm
Hmm.
starting to wonder if like the romances of the story belong to everyone else and Fanny is just going to continue watching the whole time.
I will neither confirm nor deny. Hmm.
Mhm.
Okay, next question. We see some obviously imprudent behavior from Mariah Bertram here.
Mhm.
I want to ask where we sit with Mariah as a character. Is she a villain? Where do we empathize with her? What is she doing in the story? What the fuck are you doing, girl?
What is she doing? So,
Girl!
like, yes, I empathize with the fact that she became engaged to a man she does not love because she wanted the money, and now she's found a man that intrigues her and that she does kind of want. Not necessarily that she loves because she's known him for like 3 weeks, but like someone that has caught her interest, and she's like, "Fuck, did I make a mistake?" Like, I empathize with that. So I don't think that she is a villain. I think that she is torn and trapped by her own
Poor life choices.
poor life choices. Yeah. So I think what's bad about the behavior is obviously that she's engaged and flirting with another man, not showing her own fiance much attention. I think that for the time, like we've already said, this could be reputation ruining if anyone but Fanny found out. And obviously, it's upsetting to her sister who thought that Henry Crawford was for her, and she is grumpy about the fact that her sister is flirting with him when she is engaged, and it's
Very
also
much engaged,
very
yeah.
much engaged, and it's very rude to Mr. Rushworth, who is also hurt because despite her not loving him, I think that he does at least really like her.
Yeah, I think, I empathize as far as like, I can't imagine being a woman with sexual desires in the Jane Austen era
Right.
and dealing with that and finding yourself very drawn to a man. It's, difficult. And I think, in our 21st century lens, I want to be very like generous to Mariah that like if you haven't felt that sort of desire before, maybe you think you're doing the responsible thing,
Mhm.
marrying someone really wealthy and building a comfortable life for yourself. But you meet someone who awakens certain things in certain parts of your body that maybe haven't been woken before.
Mhm.
Um, it's understandable. It's not a victimless crime, though, and I think that's the piece you're getting at. Is she is a bit of an entitled little brat.
She's hurting a lot of people.
Yeah, and she's playing very fast and loose, and it's very entitled, playing with fire and not thinking you could possibly get burned.
Right.
So we'll call this the Mariah "What the fuck are you doing, girl" tracker,
Yeah.
and we'll stay up to date with our girl Mariah
Love it.
making some questionable life choices.
Yeah.
I want to talk about what we think Jane Austen thinks about all these characters in this portion of the book a little bit, because again, author intent is important, but not everything.
Mhm.
But I think Jane Austen is writing a bit more about morality than she usually does
Yes.
and what she thinks is right and wrong.
Mhm.
That's clear here. I also think that Jane Austen has never been one to be too hoity-toity with her characters
Uh-huh.
and to focus on ensuring that they're wonderful human beings.
Right.
And I think a lot of this comes out through the clergyman conversation. What do we think Austen thinks about clergymen?
This is such a thing that I think with every book it changes, and what's interesting here is that, like, usually with the clergymen, I feel like I don't take them seriously, like, I feel like
Often the comic relief.
they're the comic relief, they are uppity and believe that they're better than everyone else.
Mhm.
We've talked about this already, but, like, it's coming into more clarity in my head now. This is the first time that I've thought that the clergyman, being Edmund, actually believes the things that he's saying.
I mean, it's the first clergyman who we're taking seriously
Yeah, like, I appreciate what he's saying.
on the religion portion of it. Like,
Yes.
neither you nor I is Anglican.
No.
Neither one of us is Christian. but you believe him when he says these things. Like, you believe that he thinks these things,
Mhm.
and you believe we're dipping our toe into Christianity in an Austen book, which doesn't happen very often.
Right.
And again, as I said, Jane Austen herself was Christian,
Right.
and did sort of believe in the church. But yeah, I think she's kind of poking at something societal
Yeah.
here with Edmund's espousing his beliefs and things maybe he does hold dearly, but not necessarily things that he's currently acting upon.
Exactly.
Whereas Fanny, for the stick up her butt, is actually sort of acting in line with her beliefs.
Yeah.
For all sort of we've been a little poo pooing on Fanny this chapter, but she does stick to her guns in a way
Yes.
that he's not,
Right.
and none of the rest of the characters are really sticking to their guns on anything right now.
Right. I also think that Edmund might realize the error of his ways. Not necessarily right now, but I do see the possibility for him to realize the error of his ways because he's already proven several times that he can acknowledge when he's done something fucked up and
Hmm.
apologize and try to make it better.
Yeah.
So that's what I think about that.
Funniest quote.
It's one I've already read, but I'm going to go with, "Oh, do not attack me with your watch. A watch is always too fast or too slow. I cannot be dictated to by a watch."
Love.
Ugh.
Questions moving forward.
I think the thing that I'm left with right now, there's a couple things. Will Mariah and Julia like talk about what's going on? Like, will it come to light for anyone other than like Fanny kind of observing from the outside that there is a battle for a man going on between an engaged woman and someone who isn't? And will Fanny, this is an overarching thing, but will she get her own love story? Because right now she doesn't seem to be of interest to any of the men.
Hmm. Who wins the chapters?
I would like to give a win to Mrs. Rushworth.
Okay.
I know she's not in the chapters a lot.
She generously invited all these people to her home.
She did, and she gave them a tour, and she just like allows all of this stuff to happen while still trying to maintain a kind of grasp on what's going on. She supervises Mrs. Norris while she just like takes stuff from her house. I really like her. I think she's doing her best, but I want to give an honorary mention to, maybe she should get my honorary mention. But I can't think of anyone else who did better in this chapter. I guess Mr.
Yeah.
Rushworth like ran to get that key.
Yeah, but I don't think he came out on top.
No, he did not. I want to I want to give Fanny something.
Yeah, we'll give it to Fanny for being a keen observer, but it's sort of a half win because Mrs. Rushworth isn't in the chapters enough to really gain a win. And
Right.
for Fanny, this is the first stick up her butt moment.
And she's been stomped all over this chapter section.
But she came out strong because she's the only one who didn't make poor life choices.
Yes.
So
we'll give it to Fanny with an honorary mention to Mrs. Rushworth.
Yes. Listeners, that concludes this episode of Pod and Prejudice. For next time, we're just going to read the next 2 chapters of Mansfield Park, which is chapters 11 and 12. Molly, are you ready for it?
I'm so ready.
Well, until next time, stay proper.
And don't jump the fence at the haha. Haha. I love that. That was great. Pod and Prejudice is edited by Molly Burdick and audio produced by Graham Cook. Our show art is designed by Torrance Brown. Our show is transcribed by SpeechDocs Podcast Transcription. For transcripts and to learn more about our team, check out our website at podandprejudice.com. To keep up with the show, you can follow us on social media at Pod and Prejudice. If you love what you hear, check out our Patreon to see how you can support us, buy some merch at podandprejudice.dashery.com, or just drop us a rating and a review wherever you get your podcasts. Stay proper.